another week, but I'm here for a fun read aloud today. It's called Cinderella Penguin. Cinderella Penguin, or the Little Glass Flipper. There once was a young penguin named Cinderella, who lived in a faraway land with her stepmother and two stepsisters. Cinderella was a kind and gentle penguin, but her stepsisters were selfish and vain. Cinderella did all the chores. She even had to pick up after her stepsisters, while they never had a thing to do. That doesn't seem very fair. The sisters wore the finest clothes and slept in large, cozy feather beds, with silk sheets and fluffy pillows. Poor Cinderella wore nothing but a worn-out, tattered clothes and slept in the cold stone cellar up on a small shelf besides some old tin plates. Wow. This reminds me of the real Cinderella. Have you ever seen Cinderella before? This is another version of it. One day it was announced that the Penguin Prince was giving a costume ball. The stepsisters and their mother received an invitation. Cinderella wanted to go too, but they just laughed at her. The prince would never want to meet such a shabby cinder block like you. For weeks the house was filled with talk of the ball. The sisters had costumes made from the finest fabrics. They ate only the tiniest meals so they could have the tiniest waists, and they were always in front of the mirror, posing and practicing their curtsies. Finally, the night of the ball arrived. Cinderella rushed about ironing her stepsisters' costumes and helping them dress. Then, without a thank you or goodbye, the carriage swept the stepmother and stepsisters off to the ball. Cinderella burst into tears. She felt so lonely and so unhappy. Suddenly, in a glow of blue light, the great fairy penguin appeared before her. "Why are you crying, Cinderella? Do you want to go to the ball?" she asked. Cinderella blinked back tears. "Oh yes, more than anything. Then you shall." "First," said the fairy penguin, "you must fetch me a pumpkin from the garden." Cinderella didn't know how a pumpkin could help her get to the ball, but she quickly brought her the best one she could find. The fairy gave it a firm tap with her wand and magically turned it into a beautiful golden carriage. Then the great fairy penguin went into the kitchen and found 6 mice carrying a huge chunk of cheese. With a tap of her wand, they turned into a handsome team of 6 horses. She turned the cheese into a fat coachman in uniform. Oh, Tula's here. Come on up. You want to come up? Come on. Come on. Come on. They all marched out the door and took their place. Oh, too close. And took their places as if it were the most natural thing to do. You're too close to the screen. "Now you can go to the ball. Are you happy, Cinderella?" asked the fairy. "Oh, yes," said Cinderella, but then she looked sadly down at her ragged clothes. "Oh, I almost forgot," said the fairy, and with a tap of her wand, Cinderella Penguin's rags became a beautiful gown with gold trimming and a real gold tiara. On her feet, she wore a pair of glass flippers, the prettiest and most delicate that Cinderella had ever seen. Oh my goodness, look how silly. Look at those glass slippers. Oh, how funny. "Now one last thing," said the great fairy penguin. "The magic spell ends at the stroke of midnight. The carriage will turn back into a pumpkin, the horses back into mice, the coachman into cheese, and you'll again be dressed in rags. So you must leave the ball before midnight." Cinderella promised to remember. Then, waving goodbye, she stepped into the carriage and rode off, her heart filled with joy. When Cinderella arrived at the palace, the ball was in full swing. She was welcomed with a fanfare of trumpets, and she marveled to see so many fine penguins wearing such magnificent costumes. Her stepmother and stepsister didn't notice her. They were too busy gobbling down snacks and party sandwiches. But the Penguin Prince noticed Cinderella at once. "Who is she?" he asked the corridors. "She is the most beautiful penguin I have ever seen." So nice. Cinderella had never met a penguin as handsome and charming as the prince. From their first dance together, he never left her side. They whirled and twirled around the dance floor to the applause of an admiring crowd. "Who is the most beautiful penguin who has captured the prince's attention?" everyone whispered. "What a handsome couple. How well they dance together," they sighed. Cinderella had never been so happy. She wished the night could last forever. Then suddenly, she glanced up at the clock. In all the excitement, she had completely forgotten the fairy's warning. "Oh," she cried, "it's almost midnight. I have to go." And she ran from the palace in such a hurry that one of her glass flippers fell off and was lying on the steps. As Cinderella rode away in her carriage, the prince called out, "Oh, please don't go." But she was gone. He picked up the glass flipper and said, "Who was she? I don't even know her name." The next day, it was announced that the prince would marry the penguin whose foot fit the little glass flipper. There was great excitement throughout the land. First, all the princesses tried it on, then all the penguins of the court. But the flipper was way too small. The royal footmen were commanded to take the flipper from house to house. The stepsisters spent the whole day perfuming and powdering their feet. "Cinderella," said the stepmother, "your clothes are too ragged to be seen by the royal footmen. Go downstairs and polish the silver until they leave." "Oh, please, I would like to try on the flipper too," said Cinderella, knowing it would fit her perfectly. The stepsisters laughed, but then they looked down at Cinderella's webbed feet. For the first time, they noticed how delicate they were. Which feet do you think are Cinderella's? Or should I say, which flippers? I bet they're those small ones. A knock came at the front door. "Quick, hide her," said the stepsisters. They grabbed Cinderella, threw her down the cellar steps, and slammed the door. How mean! Poor Cinderella! She lay upside down with her foot caught tight in the door, unable to get free. Oh no, do you see her little flipper in the door? I think this story is foreshadowing a little bit for us. If they come in the house and they see a little flipper, they might notice her. Let's read and find out. When the footman came in, the stepsisters pushed and shoved to be the first to try on the flipper. They were so intent on snatching the flipper from each other that it slipped from their grasp, flipping high into the air and landed square on Cinderella's foot. Everyone stared. It was a perfect fit. Oh my goodness. I did not think that was going to happen. Flipped and landed right on her tooties. As the footman opened the door and helped Cinderella up, the great fairy penguin appeared. With a tap of her magic wand, she transformed Cinderella's tattered rags into a magnificent clothes that she wore to the ball. Cinderella was overjoyed. "Oh, thank you, fairy penguin. I thank you with all of my heart." The stepmothers and stepsisters' beaks dropped wide. They stared at Cinderella. "Look! Oh my! It's her! Oh no! Oh dear! We really put our foot in it!" The Penguin Prince and Cinderella were married the very next day, and the wedding bells rang throughout the land. Never before could anyone remember such a joyous and happy wedding. Cinderella and the prince truly loved each other, and they lived happily together ever after. That was a really good book. It reminded me a lot of the original Cinderella. She had a pumpkin as a carriage. She had a glass slipper, but in this story, what was it? Yeah, a glass flipper. There were stepsisters. I'm trying to think if there's any differences. Do you know any differences from the original Cinderella and Cinderella Penguin? I can't think of it right now, but I bet there's at least one. Oh, I know! Penguins! These are penguins and Cinderella was humans. I knew that. Thanks for watching.